By the mid-1700s, we surged toward our place as a nation. And while Americans are consumed by their war of independence, our latest generation of heroes, rebels, and entrepreneurs competes for the key to this land's prosperity. Our natural resources. It's an epic quest for treasure that paves the way for a new country. We are explorers, risk-takers, and dreamers, fighting the odds in a land of extremes. Across a vast continent, we build a nation. Truly strong and free. On the eastern edge of British North America, in what is now New Brunswick, 90% of this land is old-growth forest, some of the most valuable timber on Earth.
You have to see it, sir. We can't stop it.
June 1777.
It's getting worse.
Near the village of St. John, a band of timbermen race to head off disaster. They've spent months cutting down precious eastern white pine. Now, caught in a mammoth logjam, if these trees cannot make it to market, William Hazen will lose hundreds of thousands of today's dollars.
We always have to remember how bountiful this continent was when the early explorers arrived here. The richness of almost every single resource. Immigrants coming to Canada did not begin as a settler society. We began as a mercantile society.
William Hazen's investment is on the line. A fish and fur merchant from Massachusetts, Hazen has come north to seek his fortune and escape a bloody war. With the American War of Independence raging in the South, citizens are trapped between two worlds, the British Crown and a self-governing United States. Hazen bets his fortune and his future on the British.
Everybody came to Canada looking for something. People saw vast potential here in fur and natural resources. They had to dream as big as the country.
We are a country of incredible natural resource wealth. And the settlers who came here said the same thing. Their eyes went wide open and said, my gosh. And it has defined the way that we see ourselves.
Hazen's goal? To one day be the world's largest supplier of eastern white pine to the world's largest buyer, the British Navy.
The British Navy was the force that kept Britain strong, but it needed mass, it needed trees. These tremendously large trees.
Light, super flexible, and up to 50 meters tall, the eastern white pine is the perfect mast for the fastest warships on the planet. And the British will pay up to 25,000 of today's dollars for a single pine. These old-growth forests are a gold mine.
You can talk about spiritual wealth, you can talk about emotional riches, but there's just, cold, hard cash as well if you are able to do your job well. And a lot of those people were able to exploit that.
Hazen knows if he can't clear the logjam, he stands to lose a fortune. The solution comes from a highly volatile substance, black powder. The world's first chemical explosive. a mixture of sulfur, charcoal, and saltpeter. It's the precursor to dynamite, but in its loose form, far more unstable.
None of these men set out to court danger. But these men had a level of kind of grit that's perhaps difficult for us to understand today.
The best thing about a great entrepreneur like William Hazen is they have this unshakable confidence that they can address the obstacles that life brings before them. They do not find life overwhelming. And there's always a way to solve a problem.
Hazen can now focus on growing his business and recruiting a workforce. He hires Mi'kmaq woodsmen, European immigrants, and a wave of Americans escaping the revolution, all in search of a better life.
Canada is a nation built on dreamers who dreamed of building a better future for themselves, for their family, and for what ultimately became our country.
But to the American army, less than 100 kilometers away, Hazen's trade with their sworn British enemy is a threat. Colonel John Allen,
William Hazen!
one of George Washington's senior staff officers, is sent north to shut them down.
We believe you're putting your resources behind the wrong side.
Allen, he's the army, he's the Continental Army. He's come to invade this territory, to conquer this territory from its British territory. And he wants to take that from him. And I don't know about you, but I would have said, yes, take my land.
I don't care what you believe.
Colonel Allen wants Hazen out of his way. He imprisons him and instigates an aggressive takeover of his business.
The workers that would have been working for Hazen, they would have been absolutely dependent on him. He would have provided housing for these men. He would have fed their families. He would have known their families. He would know everything about these men. And they would have been loyal to him.
Hazen's men refuse to help. The American colonel has underestimated their allegiance to their employer.
Several weeks later, Hazen escapes. He gets back to Halifax. He tells what's happened, and Allen's invasion is effectively ended in that moment.
Determined to protect Hazen's assets, the British send 3 ships straight to St. John.
Let's go.
After weeks spent as a prisoner and days on the run, Hazen is free to return to his business. His loyalty to his new homeland secured.
It's the risk takers that tend to pop up a little taller than everybody else. You have to have a belief in yourself that you can do it in any walk of life. But you've got to have the stamina and the drive to do it and be able to get off the canvas once you hit the first failure and, and keep going.
If you don't have domestic Canadian businesses that create a thriving domestic economy, people wouldn't have seen a better life. If we didn't have entrepreneurs like William Hazen, I can't see how that colony would have been drawn into America. And Canada wouldn't be what it is today.
Within 50 years, British North America supplies over 80% of all British timber. Eastern Canada's economy becomes a powerhouse, transforming St. John from a wilderness settlement into the thriving commercial center of New Brunswick.
It's amazing when you look back. That one person contributed to this collective identity. One person's story helped to shape our country.
From eastern Canada, European traders begin to head west in search of new riches, spreading out beyond the Great Lakes for the first time.
There was a sense that the West represented opportunity. There were merchants who saw the riches there as helping their pocketbooks. With the development of North America, there is always this push westward.
The charge is led by Canada's first trading empire, the Hudson's Bay Company. But a new rival company has set its sights on the West.
This new entity, the Northwest Company, it had one cardinal mission: to beat the bay to the source of the furs.
The European movement across North America was ultimately monetary. And it was very defining in terms of creating the country we now call Canada.
Both Hudson's Bay and Northwest Companies move onto the traditional lands of the Blackfoot, Ojibwe, Cree, and Nakota. These company traders are the economic engine of a burgeoning nation, coming face to face with an ancient, formidable one, changing life on the prairies forever. 1802, on the western edge of the Great Plains, in what is now Alberta. The Hudson's Bay Company and the Northwest Company arrived to establish trading posts at Rocky Mountain House. 3 company traders keep a close watch over their horses, their most valuable commodity. Nearby, a half-dozen young men of the Nakota Nation approach. Their traditions, nothing like those of the newcomers.
We don't come from a place of property that defines us. We have a connection to the earth. We have a connection to our land. That's our traditional way of being, is being with that land.
Chatka is their daring young leader. In broad daylight, he plans a horse raid. A competition for dominance against rival traders and nations.
It meant to protect your families, your community against this incursion of somebody totally different and very, very powerful, if I might add.
Chatka would have had a lot of prestige from having gone on raids. The more daring your raid, the more prestige you got.
For Chatka, this raid is also sport, meant to build his nation's reputation.
I don't think Europeans quite understood the war games. Often it's about bravery. It was sort of a way of life.
Chatka and his men go undercover.
When we think of these warriors of the plains, yes, it was exciting. But it was a dangerous thing, too. And the idea wasn't so much to kill your opponent, but rather to somehow get the best of your opponent without shedding any blood.
Chatka knows that the warrior with the most horses will become the master of the plains. After the last ice age, the horse disappears from North America. In the 16th century, it is reintroduced by the Spanish. Horses slowly migrate north, and by the dawn of the 1800s, there are millions on the plains.
The horse in plains culture was transformative. It also revolutionized the way that people hunted buffalo.
The North American bison, also known as buffalo, can run 65 kilometers an hour. A horse can hit 88.
Imagine the adrenaline rush of these warriors just chasing the stampeding buffalo. That's exciting, but very dangerous, I'm sure.
A mature male buffalo can weigh a ton. Before the horse, carrying its heavy carcass back to camp could take days. Now, with the horse, only hours. Nothing is wasted.
Everything you could imagine, you could make from a buffalo.
One buffalo yields more than 30 kilograms of the ultimate survival food, pemmican.
And the pemmican really was the power bar of the 18th and 19th centuries.
A mixture of dried buffalo meat, fat, and berries that takes years to spoil. And it keeps the newcomers alive.
No fur traders on their long journeys would have been able to go a mile without a good supply of pemmican.
Chotka and the Nakota become some of the most prosperous traders on the plains and key leaders in the buffalo hunt. But for the buffalo, there's another change coming. More popular than the horse, but is far more destructive. The gun. It can take 15 arrows to kill one buffalo. With a rifle, just one bullet, aimed at the lungs. At the dawn of the 19th century, the buffalo number in the millions. By the end of that century, only hundreds will remain.
The eradication of the buffalo herds, it affected everyone, the Crees, the Métis. It changed the whole dynamic of the West.
It's been built into the way we've developed this country that too often we didn't think long term.
Throughout the 18th century, the pursuit of natural resources continues to define the growth of our nation. So far, the limitless wealth of the land has been exploited for European gain in the Old World. That is about to change. 24-year-old English immigrant Matthew Bell is determined to build an industrial empire right here. Born into great wealth in Britain, Bell has crossed the Atlantic to buy a labor-intensive, high-risk company in what is now the province of Quebec.
The people that came to Canada were visionaries. They left the known, they left their homes, they left their country. They wanted a better world.
Often the higher risk that you take, the bigger success you can have because of it. And that's exciting because, yeah, you could fail, but then you have a story to tell.
He's betting his family fortune that he can strike it rich and catapult Canada into the Industrial Revolution. (1793), just outside of Trois-Rivières, Quebec. Halfway between Montreal and Quebec City. British immigrant Matthew Bell makes the biggest decision of his life and purchases the lease to the Forge du Saint-Maurice. Bell is a visionary who sees Canada as fertile ground to create something new.
There are many stories of individuals who really felt that they could reinvent themselves. It's this idea of a future that they felt that they couldn't achieve or find in those places that they were coming from.
Bell doesn't know it, but he has just set the course for the industrialization of a nation. For 50 years, the forge has been supplied by a rich vein of iron ore that lies just below ground outside of Trois-Rivières. It provides Lower Canada's 200,000 residents with iron goods. From axes to horseshoes, all basic staples for 18th century life.
Items were produced by craftsmen in different forms, different ways, but mainly for local consumption.
But Bell has a much bolder idea for the Forge Saint-Maurice. He's ready to modernize his inventory and expand distribution.
What differentiates entrepreneurs from everyone else is that they're seeing a future that other people can't. They're seeing and they're believing, and then they're actually building everything they want the future to look like.
Bell has seen the Industrial Revolution transform millions of lives in England through the introduction of modern factories and mass production. He wants to bring this revolution to Lower Canada. So he puts his mind to solving our greatest challenge: surviving the winter.
Winter shapes us more than anything else. Winter's one season out of 4, and yet it defines us more than the other 3 seasons combined.
Our ancestors had to be very, very creative and very innovative in order to find some ways to survive in these extreme conditions.
In the 1780s, people in Canada depend upon open-air fires to heat their homes during winter. But 80% of that heat escapes, and old stone homes remain below freezing.
Stone is essentially a sponge. If you blow up stone under a microscope, you'll see a lot of holes. And they suffered the variations in temperature because of that. So what we think are the good old days when they were built like buildings should be built, the reality is what you'd find is they weren't great buildings. They just weren't.
Bell sees an opportunity to create a more efficient heat source. An airtight stove that radiates more heat than a fireplace and will save Canadians from suffering through brutal winters.
Innovation is being unsatisfied with the status quo and being crazy enough to believe that you can change that.
Bell takes a calculated risk to reinvent the Forge Saint-Maurice from a toolmaker into a high-efficiency appliance manufacturer.
You almost have to get comfortable with constantly being in this state of like, I might go bankrupt, this might not work, the market might not like it.
He hires forgers to experiment with a revolutionary concept: the wood box mold. The mold forces liquid iron to harden in the precise shape necessary for an airtight seal. The first of its kind to be designed and manufactured in Canada. It's dangerous and delicate work.
Sir, we will have to wait overnight for it to set.
Success. A stove that can now burn wood reaching 600 degrees Celsius, twice as hot as an open fire. A game changer for people living in a frozen continent. Sales take off. 100 orders in the first months.
There's nothing quite like this growth stage of a company, right? There's this first stage, which I would describe as the fear of not knowing if this is going to work.
The work is intricate and time-consuming. Bell can't keep up with the demand.
The second stage is you have something that's working and you just can't grow fast enough. And that's what was happening here is everyone now wanted one of these stoves.
To deliver his stoves to hundreds of new customers, Bell must also recast the workday. He employs over 400 people to build his stoves and guarantees his workers year-round employment. Matthew Bell becomes the first company owner in Lower Canada to pay his workers a guaranteed annual salary.
It was the opportunity for those Canadians and Quebecois to settle down, to have some kind of security.
Production soars, and by 1800, the St. Maurice Forge manufactures over 1,000 stoves a year, 10 times their original output.
This was one of those innovations that allowed us to produce at a rate that we had never imagined.
It's a commercial triumph. Bell's invention becomes affectionately known as the Canada stove.
The stove was important because it's a symbol of the Industrial Revolution, the symbol of what Canada would become, a manufacturing country, a modern country, an industrial country. And that was the key to prosperity.
The forge grows not just an industry, but the community around it. The population of St. Maurice doubles, making it Canada's first company town.
It changed the world that we knew, and it transformed what we were.
Over the next 200 years, company towns become an emblem of our growing nation, coast to coast. From the steel town of Hamilton to the oil patch mecca of Fort McMurray.
Whether or not that's been to our detriment in terms of the exploitation of natural resources, it's always something that has been, deeply woven into our economy and our identity as a country.
As European industry is born in the east, thousands of kilometers away to the west, an Indigenous industry thrives. No European has laid eyes on it until now. On April 1st, 1778, a British Navy expedition seeks a shortcut between the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. It's an epic quest to hunt down the fabled Northwest Passage.
They want to find their way around North America. It's all about trying to find your way around North America to get to Asia. It's all about trade. It's all about the commerce of empire.
But before they find a passage, the British ships take shelter in Nootka Sound, off today's Vancouver Island, and discover a rich Indigenous nation that will dominate the global fur trade.
First Peoples, particularly in British Columbia, but right across this country, had rich, vibrant societies that were complex.
They were already well established as business people. They knew how to drive a bargain, and they knew the value of what they were trading.
And on this coast, all trade runs through a powerful 22-year-old leader, Chief McQuinnah of the Mowachat Nation.
Of course, McKenzie was impressed by the scale of the ships, but they weren't intimidated by the people on those ships. I mean, after all, McKenzie was a chief. He controlled huge territories, in some sense, his known world.
McKenzie was one of the biggest chiefs amongst many, many big chiefs. He was a king of kings, if you will. And that was recognized widely on the West Coast.
The young Chief McQuinnah is an experienced trader and is undaunted by Britain's greatest explorer. A man who has twice circled the globe, Captain James Cook. The impact of their meeting will be felt around the world. On the western edge of North America, two great powers are introduced. Chief McQuinnah of the Mowachat Nation has just invited Captain James Cook of the British Empire to a meeting.
There were extensive trading networks of the First Nations in this country, and they were very entrepreneurial. Much of Canada was built on industrialist entrepreneurs who found ways to create businesses that harvested the resources we have in this country.
McQuinnah presents a pelt native to the North Pacific, the sea otter. Cook has never seen anything like it.
I can only imagine what he must have felt when he held the first sea otter pelt in his hand. The sea otter never feels a drop of water on its flesh because of that insulation, and that's what made them so valuable. This wasn't another beaver. This is the animal that has the richest fur in the world.
McQuinnah trades his pelts for precious metals and tools, and sends Cook to introduce his extraordinary furs to the world.
This desire for trade in the sea pelt, that was their introduction to the global economy.
Crossing the Pacific with McQuinnah's furs, Cook is ambushed and killed in a skirmish with indigenous Hawaiians. But his crews reach China, and the lustrous sea otter pelts become a worldwide sensation. Europeans flock to Nootka Sound, creating fierce competition amongst rival trappers.
Suddenly there was this frenzied, feverish demand for that product, and they weren't about to let that trade out of their hands. And they played Spaniard off against Englishman, off against Russian, and did whatever they could to control the trade and to maximize their profit from that trade.
1789. Spain unilaterally declares itself McQuinnah's sole trading partner, prompting Britain to threaten war. McQuinnah knows this explosive feud threatens the Moachat nation's business. He summons the Europeans. Spain's Captain Juan Francisco de la Bodega and Britain's Captain George Vancouver. McQuinnah introduces them to what will become Canadian diplomacy.
That process of seeking consensus was something that was at the core of an Indigenous understanding of the world.
Welcome.
To strengthen his position, he has taught himself English and Spanish.
Bienvenidos.
The fur trade was built on Indigenous principles of trust and discussion and meetings and relationships, which was a totally non-European way of doing it. And it was the Indigenous rules which dominated all of that.
McQuinnah's negotiations lead to an international agreement. Britain and Spain will now share the sea otter trade with the Moachat. With his territory protected under trade law and a global market for his furs, McQuinnah's wealth multiplies.
And he shared that wealth, which is an important part of what makes a man powerful.
The Pacific fur trade is now one of the most lucrative in the world. The Hudson's Bay Company and the Northwest Company are desperate to get in. But they need an overland route to the West Coast. And no one, neither Indigenous nor European, is known to have done this before.
Imagine no roads, no little paths carved into the hills where the nice guide from Banff shows you how it was. Nothing. A compass, and an axe, and a dream.
May 9th, 1793, Fort Fork, southwest of today's Peace River, Alberta. The Northwest Company has commissioned a band of explorers led by 29-year-old Alexander McKenzie. They embark on the most epic adventure in Canadian history, finding a route that links the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans.
People didn't paddle a canoe across the continent in order to get a little bit of light exercise. They were in quest of wealth, and the wealth in Canada was based on the fur trade.
Standing in Mackenzie's way, an uncharted stretch of 100 separate mountain ranges, 4,800 kilometers long.
You look at the Rockies, and you're filled with awe. They're huge, absolutely astounding. But because we're humans, we want to see what's beyond.
If he succeeds, McKenzie will reshape British North America.
What made McKenzie tick? There's something within him that wants to move west. It's a challenge, it's an opportunity, it's like climbing the Everest.
But first, he must survive the deadly journey ahead. Alexander McKenzie has been a fur trader since the age of 15. He's joined the Northwest Company, which is desperate to enter the sea otter trade. McKenzie now has the impossible task of crossing the Rockies.
I mean, we're very lucky. We can travel across this big, huge land that's far too big because we can get on a plane, but it wasn't that long ago, none of those things existed.
It's a 2,000-kilometer trek through the punishing wilderness.
I can't leave the house without my phone, let alone, tackling a mountain with no sense of what's on the other side of it. It's incredible, the amount of faith in the adventure and bravery.
4 years earlier, McKenzie attempted the same trip but got lost, following a river that left him in the Arctic Ocean.
They did that journey to the Arctic. Then he went back to England to study new ideas of navigation that had come about with the development of an understanding of longitude.
McKenzie can now calculate his precise position and hopes to avoid another costly mistake. McKenzie's team of French-Canadian voyageurs and guides from the Dene Nation paddle for weeks against the current. Up the Peace, Finley, and Parsnip rivers, until violent rapids make paddling impossible. The only way out is up. 1,400 kilograms of supplies and one unwieldy canoe must be hauled up a mountain. It's what the French Canadians call a portage.
May 22nd. At break of day, the men began, without delay, to cut a road up the mountain.
They use the terrain to their advantage, rigging an ingenious system of ropes and pulleys. Hiking more than 390 meters above the Rocky River below. At the top, they meet a local elder who tells McKenzie of a foot trail to the river's next navigable section.
They were constantly encountering and using the help of local people. I mean, that's what an explorer does.
With the grueling 3-day portage complete, they return to the water. June 12th, McKenzie finally reaches the Continental Divide. On either side of this height, the water flows east or west. The men will now paddle down the river towards the Pacific.
At last, we enjoyed, after all our toil and anxiety, finding ourselves on the bank of a navigable river.
But here too, they will face disaster.
The violence of the current was so great as to drive the canoe sideways down the river. It drove against the rock, which shattered the stern.
Morale hits rock bottom. McKenzie has a new goal: to survive.
The moment when you're pushed to your limits is when the battle begins. When you are exhausted, when you have nothing else to give, that is when you start fighting.
But the Fraser River has its own deadly hazards. including a sheer drop. Their precious route to the sea blocked. McKenzie must convince his men that their best chance is to backtrack 12 days and 285 kilometers to the Horsefly River. They push west over some of the world's most rugged terrain. The men are depleted, on the verge of abandoning the expedition.
The discouragements, difficulties, and dangers have excited the wish to discontinue this pursuit, and it began to be muttered on all sides that there was no alternative but to return.
Finally, a lucky break, courtesy of the Newhalk Nation.
Our traditional greetings have always been openness. That's what we offered. We'll help you survive. You are strangers to this land. You need some help here, because this is what we've been taught to share.
July 22nd, 1793. After 3 months and nearly 2,000 kilometers, McKenzie follows what is now Bella Coola River in British Columbia and reaches the Pacific Ocean. He famously leaves his mark using berries and grease, later permanently inscribed by local surveyors.
And McKenzie imagined more and determined his need to see more. Why? Because I'm sure he wished to be more.
Alexander McKenzie breaks more than a geographic barrier. He connects a continent, blazing a trail that will eventually lead to the wealth of the open Pacific. Canada's new foundational industry, the fur trade, now stretches from east to west.
Our natural resources will always be incredibly important to us, but don't kid yourself. Our greatest natural resource is not what's in the ground or above the ground or in the water. It's the people. It's Canadians. It's our people who are our greatest resource.
Through courage, ingenuity, and collaboration, diverse peoples have forged new links across this vast land, reaching 3 oceans. But this new union of the North is about to be tested by war and a massive invasion from the South.